Oh.
Hello, hello.
What's good?
All
Put on my projecting voice now.
right. Oh yeah.
They're just being all quiet. What's good, Nick's Rose? Hopefully we sound
Yeah, let us know how the
oh,
audio is. I can adjust some things quick before we hit that record button.
I just be Doom 2016, so I a lot of Doom Eternal footage. Shit.
Oh yeah. Did you finish yesterday for
Mm-hmm.
2016? Nice.
Yeah. Played like 3 hours straight, a little bit over 3 hours, I think.
Oh
Just
dang.
finished it up.
Nice. I seen
Finished.
almost everyone seems to be playing either Animal Crossing or Doom. So
Bruh, it's wild, yo. I've never been in Animal Crossing, so like
oh
I've
no. Me
always seen the
neither.
fan. Yeah, I've always seen the fandom, but it's never really registered. Like the closest game I've ever played to Animal Crossing is like Viva Pinata. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Viva Pinata was tight though.
Yeah, I remember playing it's not the same, but like those old roller coaster tycoon and stuff
Oh
on the old
yeah.
PlayStation, just making theme parks and stuff. That
Mm-hmm.
was fun stuff.
Yeah, all those games. I never played Roller Coaster Tycoon. I'm trying to figure out what like, simulation type society games I played. I definitely played Sims like for a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I sound like I'm cutting in and out. That should not be the case.
That might be on my end then. Let's see if I can figure that one out. My Discord
Mic
seems
check. Hello, hello. Am I still cutting out?
that's
Mic
better
check.
now. All right. Yeah, my Discord says it's like 10 ping, so I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay. I'll lower my noise gate a little bit,
Yeah.
just in case.
All right. It's better now. All right, cool. Well, if something else happens, we can figure it out real quick.
Yeah, we can address that as it comes along.
But I'd imagine we'll be good. Man, chat, you're all gonna see when we switch to the new overlay how great my camera is. It's just a super old laptop camera. You can't even see my hand when it's moving. It's great.
Oh man,
It's all right. Good thing this is a podcast. They can't see it.
that's true. Primarily for the audio.
Yeah. All right. There we go. All right. You ready to get started?
Oh yeah.
All right. Let me start the recording quick, and then we'll get going. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the EQNX Podcast, Episode 1. I am the host, FireWolf, and I'm here with Rynge, and I need to
What's
switch the
good, man?
scene.
How's it going?
I'm good.
Great. As great as we can be during these times, really.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so why don't you introduce yourself real quick to anyone who may not know who you are?
All right. Well, my tag is Rynge. I am a commentator in the fighting game community. I primarily commentate Dragon Ball fighters. I've done a little bit of Grand Blue commentary, but of course, given the state of things, there hasn't been too many actual big Grand Blue tournaments, so I haven't really gotten to stretch my wings on that. But I've done the Dragon Ball Fighters World Tour. I've done Capcom Pro Tour. I've done Street Fighter League. I've done Tekken here and there. I've done a lot of Guilty Gear commentary. I was part of the Arc Revo finals Guilty Gear Exert commentary team along with Tasty Steve and Ryan Hunter. So I've been around the block a few times. I started back in was like 2011, 2012 for commentary. For Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. That was where I really cut my teeth with commentary and kind of what's been the foundation of my style and what I find important in commentary. So I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later, but that's pretty much the brief summary. As well as I for Magic Pixel, a new D&D show that's primarily FGC based. We have all kinds of fighting game community members on the show, so that's been a real fun time. We've only had one episode so far, but it does air every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on Sage and Dragon. Really recommend going out over there. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah,
All right, I think my audio just cut quick, so I'm trying to figure that out.
I see.
No, yeah, I love Magic Pixel. That's definitely a great show, and everyone should be checking that out. So you got into it briefly. Why don't you tell us a little more about like how you got started in commentary and kind of why fighting games over any other real esport?
Well, so I was pretty much a late bloomer when it came to video games in general. Like I played when I was a kid, but I primarily was like a Madden GTA kid. You know, one of those fellows. That's all I really played. I played sports games and then Grand Theft Auto here. But Xbox 360 came out, I went to Best Buy and played Call of Duty 2 on like a surround sound HD TV setup, and I was like, wow, my mind was just straight blown. So after that, I kind of dug into games a little bit more, and then I met one of my friends from Maryland who was on a forum that I frequently visited who wanted to get into fighting games, right? Street Fighter 4 was coming out, so he was like, let's get into fighting games a little bit. Let's play some Third Strike. So we like played Third Strike on Kylera and learned a little bit Street Fighter and fighting games from that. And once Street Fighter 4 came out, I kind of started delving a little bit deeper. I was playing online a lot. And there was a part of like there was a certain plateau I hit online. I felt that I like didn't know how to really get better. So I went to search for some offline sessions, right? And that led me to SRK, which led me to the like local offline battles section of the forum, where I found my local scene, which is no longer really in existence. Shout outs to Mondo, IE Battlegrounds. He was the person that was running the local at the time. Of course, he is now in the Philippines, working for XSplit, I believe, still. So he's not really here to run the locals anymore. But of course, I was able to kind of move on to Thursday night run back as well as Wednesday night fights, which were held at Super Arcade in Walnut, California. Of course, Super Arcade since moved and then shut down again. But it's been an unfortunate scene for the offline locals. But that's how I kind of got started. But then it was funny because when I was playing Street Fighter 4, I would see footage of Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And when I saw footage of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I pretty much said, if there's ever a new Marvel game, that's what I'm going to put my time into. because I just fell in love with Marvel vs. Capcom 2 as soon as I saw it. Right, obviously all the Marvel superheroes, but like what fascinated me was the movement and everything, all the minute decisions that were happening so quickly. So fortunately for me, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was announced shortly after that, and I was like, holy shit, I'm going to go full ham in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. So I did, and I started playing a lot of Marvel 3. I started playing Ultimate, and as far as getting into commentary went, in our local scene, obviously, we have me being in Southern California, we have very strong local commentators, right? James Chen and Ultra David were kind of the forefront, the pioneers of a lot of the fighting game commentary, as well as Rip. And there's a lot of people that were part of MLG back in the day that were really the first people in the fighting game community to do a lot of commentary. But I really felt like James and David were not like hitting what I wanted for Marvel 3 commentary. Like it didn't seem like they played the game that much. And there was a lot of like decision making that were happening by the players that I just felt like the commentators, not just James and David, but the commentators in Marvel 3 did not talk about enough. So I was like, yo, I started bugging Mondo IE Battlegrounds at our local scene, like ones that were getting like 20 viewers at most, right? But I wanted to be on the mic. So I was like, yo, let me on the mic because I think I can do some commentary. Fan of wrestling, professional wrestling my entire life. The big things I've taken away from professional wrestling is the commentary, right? I grew up in the Attitude Era where it was JR and King and all that, and I got to hear a lot of great commentary, as well as Joey Styles from ECW. That's been a big influence on me as well. So because of all those legendary commentators and getting to hear them, I felt like I knew somewhat how to do some commentary, right? Especially when our local scene didn't really have any. I wanted to try it out. So I got to try it out. I felt a bit comfortable getting along with it at our local scene. And then Mondo took over Wednesday night fights and Thursday night run back. And because of that, we had a rapport already, so he needed commentators for TRB, and I stepped in and became one of the regular commentators for Thursday night run back at the Super Arcade local that we were having. And then Friday we also had casuals on so I would go Friday and we would just shoot the shit with the chat or do, dumb stuff online. So because of that, that's where I really cut my teeth on the commentary scene and where I've kind of established a foundation. And yeah, that's I mean, I've always been a person who finds the juice in fighting games to be the decision making. So that's kind of where I first started making sure I emphasized in commentary was the player decision making.
Right, and that's something that can be really hard to determine when you're not the player. So I think
Yeah.
that part of it is really interesting because
Yeah.
different people can have different opinions on watching the exact same thing. So then,
Yes.
speaking of like decision making, how do you decide every year like what games you're going to focus your commentary efforts on?
So it's mainly the games that I really like playing, right? So like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, like it's still one of my favorite games of all time. Like not just one of my favorite fighting games of all time, but like period, one of my favorite games of all time. So I really fell in love with it for me to be like, I want to do commentary for this, right? Street Fighter 4, I didn't like that much, so I never really tried to pursue commentary for Street Fighter 4. And then for Guilty Gear, that's another game that I really fell in love with. Guilty Gear Xrd. I started playing Zato, and that's like probably my favorite fighting game character in the world, like to date. So
Yeah.
because of that, it was also easy to like jump in, get my hands on Guilty Gear a lot since I was just playing constantly. And then because of that, I knew a lot of the decision making that went into the player process, right? I think that's always been something that's really important to me for commentary and something that I feel like is necessary because every time I've tried to commentate something that I don't play, which has not been very often, it's usually because somebody asked me as a favor to do it. I kind of just go like, not really. It's like off the cuff, kind of, but you keep it more broad. You keep it more general, right? And that's cool, and that's something that's got to be done, every now and then, especially if you're like reaching a wider audience, like if you're doing Evo or something like that. Your commentary can be too nuanced because there's obviously a lot of new eyes on the game watching for the first time, so you kind of have to broaden your diction and what you actually want to explain when it comes to the game. But yeah, I felt like playing the games have always been so important when it comes to commentary because I think since the juice for me is the player decision making, like to properly get that across to the audience, you really need to play the game a lot yourself. So you put yourself in those scenarios and figure out what exactly is going through the player's mind when they have to or when they're approached with certain situations.
Right. So
So
you mentioned that it's important to not be too nuanced so that new players or people that aren't as involved with the scene, if they start watching, they can still understand. One
Yes.
so one stream that I know of, or another esport that does that really well, is Dota with the
Mhm.
international. They always have their newcomer stream every year, which I've
Yes.
I've never played Dota, but watching that is a great way for me to like the international's huge. It's got millions of dollars on the line. Interesting to
Mhm.
just about anyone for the stakes. Do you
Yes.
think fighting games are obviously much more nuanced and very specific interactions that happen per second?
Mhm.
Um, how do you think we can like go about implementing something like that, or do you think we should just have one stream all the time?
That's a good question. I think for Evo, a newcomer stream wouldn't be the worst thing, and that's kind of, I think, what the philosophy of the jump off has kind of been
Hmm.
the past couple of years, right? The jump off, if people don't know, is a stream at Evo where there's like a panel of 4 to 5 people around the desk, and we jump from game to game, right? Oops, sorry about that. We jump from game to game. So whatever game's going on at the time, if it's like Guilty Gear, Dragon Ball, Street Fighter, and Tekken, like we will jump between those 4 games, right? And we'll have different people on the panel talking about the different games, right? People that are experts in the game. But in general, when it comes to that type of stream, it's more of a broad focus, right? So we don't get too nuanced into the decision making of the players. And in addition to having a panel, because not everybody's an expert on that game, it's much more question based, right? So if you see something, then you can have one of the panel members kind of question, oh, why did they do that there? How does that interact with this? Blah, 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 right? So because of that, I think the jump off is a pretty good starting point for a lot of people. And I've enjoyed being on it a lot. I think it's one of the most fun streams we have at Evo. So I think the jump off has done a good job kind of filling that niche. If we were to get even more like into the broader horizons, I think some of the personality and charm of the FGC would be lost a little bit. So I kind of like the format we have going now, to be honest.
Right. No, and I think each game needs to have their specific commentary and their own style because
Yeah,
you can't apply one style to every single game because with how many different esports there are, you just can't
yeah,
fit them all into one basket. So that's another thing I wanted to talk about is kind of how you apply your different interest into your commentary for fighting games. Because you mentioned like being a DM for Dungeons and Dragons and interest in
yeah.
wrestling and watching some other games. So like how do you go about taking bits and pieces that you see in other games, other events, and applying them to fighting games?
So yeah, that's a really dope thing about commentary, right? Is that pretty much every competition has commentary, right? Whether it be professional wrestling, whether it be Dota, other esports, whether it be regular sports, basketball, football, stuff like that. So once you kind of get into this commentary shit for real and really start trying to get better and prepare yourself for events, you kind of just dissect commentary naturally when it comes to everything you watch, right? To watch WWE nowadays because the commentary is god awful. So like straight up. Uh, but back in the day, right, they had Jim Ross and they had some good commentators. Like I said, Joey Styles earlier. Paul Heyman was a really good commentator when he commentated as well. So you kind of take out what you think actually what makes it good from your perspective, right? So like with Paul Heyman or Jim Ross, right? I think Jim Ross specifically is very good at storytelling and making moments seem bigger than they are, right? Really adding to the moment. And that's something that I really took from him and wrestling in general when it comes to commentary because one of the beliefs I have when it comes to commentary in general is that the players are the stars and we need to build up the players to kind of bring in more people, bring in more eyes, right? Like Sonic Fox has a reach beyond just the FGC at this point. Justin Wong has a reach beyond just the FGC at this point. And I really want, that's one of my goals in commentary is to make players on that level, right? Obviously, it's going to be very hard to get to the Jay Wong or Sonic, but that's I think our responsibility as fighting game players to really get across how much work the players put in, how much like dedication is required to even be at this level in the first place, and to really make sure that their stories are told properly, where it's like a unique tale that people find. It's super important to me to get their players' stories across because of that. So that's something I've kind of taken from wrestling. Dota Dota is really interesting to me because I watch a lot of Dota, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a little similar when it comes to team fight play by play because where I grew up and cut my teeth on commentary was Marvel 3, like I said before, and it's a very fast game, right? When Dota gets into team fights, when MOBAs get into team fights in general, it's a very fast game. So I've taken kind of like the play by play, some of the play by play aspects of Dota in terms of just the speed and in terms of trying to highlight what's really important to my commentary as well. And I think that's something that's a bit challenging for the fast games, right? Is trying to highlight the most important decisions in a short span of time because games like Dragon Ball Fighters or games like Marvel 3, Marvel Infinite, they will move on to a next like situation, a next encounter very, very fast. And
Right.
because of that, like you have to highlight what's important and get the hell on with it, right? So that's something I've kind of taken from Marvel 3 and Dota because of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to like Dungeons and Dragons and DMing, so something I've always been fascinated with was like acting and improv. That's why I've always been like a professional wrestling fan. That's why I consume as much like TV movies as I do. I think what like DMing has helped me with, and kind of vice versa. They both really helped both. Is the fact that I have to talk a lot, obviously, in both scenarios, but also like there's a lot of improv involved in dungeon mastering, especially when one of my players is Hanzo Gonzo, right? He's always throwing some wild shit at me that I
Uh-huh.
have to like think for, right? So commentary in the sense that production doesn't always go as smoothly as we want, right? It's there could be some problems with the stream or the cameras or the mics or whatever the hell's happening, right? So because of that, I feel like I've really become good in a panic in the like panic situations. So I've also become pretty good at filling time just because of that, right? Just because of the fact that I have to constantly improv in D&D, and I have to improv a lot in the fighting game community as well. Because again, production will have issues, and then we'll have to buy some time. And like at Evo Japan, I think was it 2019? I think it was 2019. There was some type of problem with the KOF stream setup, and it was literally me and Hell Pockets talking to each other for 45 minutes. That's how the stream opened, right? So
Mm-hmm.
because of stuff like that, I've just kind of have gotten a lot of experience at it. And I think it's an important skill to have, improving and being able to kill time in an entertaining fashion. I think so. Both of those things together and have allowed me to improve that skill in general as a whole.
Right. So I kind of want to expand more on D&D in a second, but first I want to go back to something you said kind of closer to the beginning about current WWE commentators.
Mm-hmm.
So something that I've noticed a lot because I work in traditional sports as well. When I
Mm-hmm.
watch like a pro football game and sometimes even like soccer, commentators are so boring. They just sit and
Right.
they describe the obvious, like it's just relaying to me what happens on the screen, like I can't see it myself.
Yeah.
And so how do you go about making sure that when you're talking, it's more than just, oh, there's a 2H, like
Yeah.
expanding on what's actually going on in the player's head? Oh, my Discord just crashed. Sorry, guys. 1 second. We'll get this figured out. All right. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right. I'm not sure what just happened. My Discord just crashed,
It's all
but
good.
I think we're back.
All right. All right. So what was the question again? I'm blanking
Um,
now.
yeah. 1 second. Oh, I gotta fix the display quick. Maybe.
Oh, I remember the question now.
Yeah. So just kind of talk about like avoiding stating the obvious as a
Yeah.
commentator.
So I really like this question because one of the questions, or whenever somebody comes to me about commentary advice, right? Like whether it be for a big gig, a small gig, or whatever, my number one advice that I always give is to have fun, right? Because I feel like if we're not having fun, the commentators, the people talking about the game, it's going to be a lot harder for the viewer at home to have fun. That's always been one of my main philosophies when it comes to commentary, right? So like people will ask me when it comes to like, oh, this is a big gig that I have now, like what should I do, blah blah. I'm like, well, number one, they hired you for your commentary that you've done up to this point, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's no need to change or do anything different because they're hiring you for you. So go into that with that confidence. And number two, I think it's just super important to always have fun, because like, yeah, if you're just gonna be like monotonous about it, like I saw this one esport, I forgot what actually the game was. I don't even think it was like a super like big like competitive game. It might have been like Monster Hunter or something, and they were showing it off. But they cut to these two commentators, and then the commentator was like, "All right, everybody, what's good? I'm glad you guys stopped by for the stream." And then the other guy was like, "Yeah, we're gonna have Monster Hunter today. Get hype." And it's like, don't say something like that. Don't say get hype like that. Like, what are you doing with your life, right? If you're gonna say something that inspires energy in the people, then you gotta say it with energy yourself. Like, you can't just like sell the people a false bill of goods like this. So that's something that I've always tried to aim for when I do commentary, is to have fun. That's always like my number one priority, is to have fun. So because of that, I usually try to be energetic, try to be lively, try to bring a fun aspect to the commentary itself. And then number two, when it comes to not just like saying 2H and not getting stuck in like a play by play, just kind of repeating what's happening on the screen, is that luckily for me, again, the most important thing for me and the juice of fighting games is the player decision making. So because of that, I've always tried to look deeper. I've always tried to delve beyond just the top layer of decision making when it comes to fighting games and games in general, right? That's another reason I really like Dota, is because there's a lot to delve into when it comes to the decision making on a play by play basis. So because of that, I've always wanted to get across why the player did this instead of what the player did, right?
Right.
So that's mainly been my inspiration for going beyond just being like, oh, he 2H the anti-air. It's like, okay, why was he lying in wait? Was he scouting that? Was it a reaction? Was this player instant air dashing a lot? Were they super dashing a lot? Like they didn't cover their air dash with an assist, which allowed that gap in the first place. Like there's so many things that go into fighting game decision making, that's what really fascinates me about them in general. So I always try to look for the nuanced decisions by the players and kind of the context surrounding the decisions made themselves, right? That's something that I think is much easier to do when you're doing match analysis and taking on your own time and kind of being able to deliberately dissect the set yourself. But on commentary, it's a little harder because you have to do it fast and you have to move along so you don't get stuck talking about something that happened 30 seconds ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the hard part about commentary and doing like deep delve analysis while you're commentating a very fast game. But that's always been a challenge that I've looked forward to, and always a challenge that's something that I think is super hard to get like significantly better at. So it's something that I've always tried to improve on myself.
Right. So you talked about the guy that just like said, "Get hype," like
Yeah,
great
like come on,
energy. So if you're a lot of people, I think when they start commentating, they're probably doing it alone. At
man.
least
Yeah,
I
probably.
know when I did stuff earlier on, it was often alone. So you
Hmm.
can kind of determine your own energy. Once
Yes.
you get to part where you're doing it with another person, or maybe two other people, how do you go about handling energy if one of those other person is low energy and is not bringing that same level up to the commentary?
I do whatever I can to get them like engaged, basically. But I think that's something I'm actually pretty decent at. I've been partnered with so many different people over my commentary career. I've never really had a set partner, right? There's never been like a Tasty Steve to my stage jam. Granted, they don't do a lot of commentaries together a lot anymore either. They've always been paired with some other people, but like Rip and Steve do commentary together a lot, right? Jeremy and Steve do SFL together. And like I've had a couple of instances where I've had a regular partner, but never for that long, right? Like I did SFL a little bit filling in for Tasty Steve, so me and Jeremy got to do it. Me and Jeremy got to do like Red Bull Online in 2017 as well. But I've never had a regular partner. So that's something that I think I've just naturally had to get better at, is the fact like trying to, we call it, when we talk about commentary and we talk about matching up with other people, we legit call it matchups, right? Because we're the fighting game community. So it's just something that's in our vocab already. So if the person that's with me doesn't like have the energy to bring or whatnot, then I will do whatever I can to get them engaged. Because again, I'm just trying to have fun, and I think luckily for me is that that energy that I bring and that vibe that I bring of having fun usually makes them come out of their shell a little bit. If that's their problem, like if they're in their shell, if they're straight tired and exhausted and they just can't bring it that day, then I mean I do whatever I can to kind of make up for that. But yeah, I'll like try to ask questions, or I'll try to joke with them, or I'll do different things that, or if I know that they like something specific about the game, I'll set up a question for them to kind of elaborate on. And, you know, sometimes it could be during the match, sometimes it's more after the match because we have more time to talk and stretch it out. But it's really kind of knowing the person that you're commentating with. If they're a random, then again, you just like, if you've never commentated with them before, you have no rapport with them, then you kind of just have to hope that your jokes or your energy lands with them and they kind of get brought up by it. But yeah, I've always tried to just engage the person that I'm commentating with the most and really listen to what they're saying. So if they say something, then you can react to it, and then you kind of get a better reaction out of them, because then they realize that they're not just talking. It's not just two people talking. It's two people having a conversation in addition to commentating. So because of that, I think it makes them feel a little bit more important. It makes them feel like they're actually being listened to, and what they're saying is being processed and thought about by the person that they're commentating with, which I think makes people care more, because they know now that you're not just kind of doing your own thing.
Right. No, yeah, I think that's really interesting, and that's a big part, is being able to work with someone that you haven't worked with before, and like
Yeah,
being
yeah,
prepared
like
for any situation.
yeah, like I think I've only commentated like one time with Rip. Like we did like a CBT online together, and that was fun, right?
Hmm.
Because I still had a rapport with Rip, even though we hadn't really commentated together. So I knew what he was good at commentary, and I knew like what to set him up with, right? So it's really kind of, it's easier if you have a rapport with the person. If you don't, again, I think you just got to bring the energy levels and try to really listen in on what they're saying, so you can find out what they feel is important, and then have them elaborate on it or engage them about that specific scenario in certain ways.
Right. Yeah. All right. So I want to go back to D&D. Um,
Hmm.
so from my understanding, like a big part of being a DM is
Hmm.
preparing for as many possible situations as you can. Um,
Yeah.
but you still have like kind of the situation that you think is going to happen, or the most likely. So when you're commentating for fighting games, you prepare probably for like maybe X amount of people that you would expect to make top eight, or
Yeah.
certain characters to be played more often. Um, how do you go about that unexpected stuff? Like some dude who showed up to his first tournament and now he's in top eight, and you have to figure out his play style and like what he's like, or if someone has some brand new team that no one else has been playing in Dragon Ball. Like how do you go about that unexpected outcome stuff?
So another one of the philosophies I have regarding commentary and kind of streaming in general is that the viewers can smell bullshit. Like I 100% believe that. So never try to front about knowledge I don't know. I don't try to front about players I don't know. I just be honest with the stream. I be honest with the viewers, because I think they can easily tell when you're fronting about it anyway. So if there is like some type of miraculous run, or somebody comes out of nowhere who's like an online warrior or whatnot, I try to do whatever I can. Like if it's, let's say if it's like, all right, the first day, like a Saturday on the tournament, they just blitz through everyone and they make top eight winners, and I never heard of this person in my life, and I'm going to be commentating top eight on Sunday, then I'll take my Saturday night to do what I can to try to research, talk to the person themselves, or talk to people who know more than me about the person, and then try to get some knowledge that way. If it's like happening right when I'm commentating, I try to focus on that story, on the fact that this person, that I mean, I've done my extensive research for the game, and this person did not come across my research, and the fact that they're blowing through everybody that I have researched from, I try to really emphasize that point, right? I'm like, okay, this person beat Justin Wong and Sonic Fox and Ninja Killa and the Kill Sage all on their road to this top 8, right? I really emphasize how impressive that is, and then I try to see what they're doing like during the match and try to kind of highlight why they're being so successful, right? So I can get that across to the viewer as well. I'm basically just trying to make them a regular in the viewer's eyes and like a super like good player, like a top tier player in the viewer's eyes as quickly as possible. That's kind of where my motivation is and what my ideology is when it comes to some unexpected thing happening in the bracket, right? So with like D&D, I've always had to like, it's just you do try to prepare for every scenario, much like fighting games, right? You try to prepare as much as you can, but as in life and anything, you cannot prepare for everything, right? Whether it be my players going off the wall and trying to steal a chest, like in the first episode of Magic Pixel, and all this crazy stuff like this, or
Right.
like it's somebody that's coming out of nowhere and making top 8 in the fighting game community at a big tournament. Like it's you can't prepare for everything, and that's something that you need to accept as a person in life. I think straight up, like whatever avenue that you're pursuing, whether it be commentary or dungeon mastering or what have you, like there's just not going to be everything that you're not going to be able to be prepared for everything. So because of that, that's part of like the very beginning of preparation is accepting that fact and kind of trying to improve your improv skills and improve your confidence in those scenarios, and then just kind of focus on aspects of the story that people find entertaining or that you feel is important, like the fact that this person is playing this variation in Mortal Kombat that we don't see a lot, and we see them exploiting these specific strategies, these specific moves that help them kind of bypass a lot of the lower tier players, and then once they get to the top tier players, see how it combats with them as well. So it's all about trying to identify what is making them successful as quickly as possible, and then kind of getting across the story that this person is coming out of nowhere and doing a lot of work, and that in general should be something that's celebrated, right? Everybody loves a good underdog story. So if you can really paint them as the underdog, a person that's a phenom that's kind of come out of nowhere, I always think people kind of latch onto that and then they kind of run with it themselves. So that's pretty much my philosophies behind stuff like that.
Right. I think that expect the unexpected kind of really sums
Yeah,
that up
straight
pretty
up, right?
well.
It's a cliche for a reason.
Mm-hmm. All right. So when you are prepping for commentary and getting ready,
Mhm.
what are kind of the things that you normally look at, whether it's players or character strength, common matchups, that kind
Yeah, it depends. I was gonna say it depends on the game I'm commentating, like what I look for more. But in general, yeah, I just try to watch a lot of match footage, right? So I'm familiar with the players that are at the upper echelon of the game, so I know and I'm familiar with the faces that are going to be in the top 8 or in the later brackets and stuff like that. But like, let's say we're commentating pools, right? There's going to be plenty of people that are unfamiliar to me in pools, or there's going to be a lot of squashes or stuff like that. So you kind of have to focus on like the entirety of the community itself, and then like when it comes to pools, you kind of have to emphasize a little bit more of an entertainment aspect rather than like the nuanced decision making that you can kind of balance when it comes to the top tier play. But yeah, I try to prepare by being familiar with the players and the frequent top 8 participants, as well as the characters of the game in general, right? It's always easy to commentate when you know every character like the back of your hand, so you don't really get surprised.
of. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, playing the game a lot really helps, honestly. Just playing constantly, whether it be online, offline, etc., training mode, like that will increase your knowledge tenfold, and it really will not only increase your knowledge about the characters, but because you've played this game a lot and you've gone into these scenarios yourself, you know how to properly talk about them on stream and get the points across to the viewers. So I legit think playing a ton really helps just because of that itself. In addition to that, I'd say, mm, yeah, I think that pretty much answers how I prepare the most. Is like I watch a lot of footage, and then if I can talk to the players, right? Like I'm friends with the Kill Sage, so a lot of the time, if I'm watching a replay or something like that, or Super Noon, if I'm watching one of their replays and I find something weird, I'll straight up ask them. Obviously, not everybody has that luxury, right?
Right.
So that's something I take advantage of, knowing the players personally and trying to kind of dissect the deeper decision makings behind what they're doing, right? So I luckily can talk to them, but I know a lot more about the situations they're in just in general, and I know the right questions to ask because I play the game a lot, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that also people kind of undervalue, is just asking the right questions. So you'll be able to ask what you really need to know and what is actually happening in the game if you play it a lot, because then you're putting yourself in these scenarios that you will be familiar with. You're like, oh, what is that about, right? It's an execution error. And if you played the game a lot and you play that character, you'll know that that was an execution error. It wasn't just like some weird decision that the person made that they tried to reset and the assist didn't come out or something like that. It was just an execution error that looked funky that not a lot of people are familiar with because this character is not played a lot or whatever, right?
Mhm.
So because of that, and because of putting a lot of hours into gameplay, you'll be familiar with what you're going to see on screen. Even if and what really happens is when you play the game a lot, you will truly understand those moments that are next level, right? Because you're going to be like, oh, I would have never thought to do that there, right? There was a moment in the winners finals of Evo 2019, yeah, Evo 2019, of Sonic Fox versus Goichi, right? Where I can't remember the exact specific scenario now, but it was like a situation where Goichi was expecting Sonic, like Sonic was plus frames, right? I think it was like Sonic was plus frames or something like that. And instead of just pressing his advantage or pressing their advantage with buttons and plus frames, they did a Dragon Rush, and Goichi managed to tech it, right? And I was just like losing my mind because in that scenario, in a specific situation like that, those decisions rarely ever get made to do something like that, right? And you'll really know that decision does not get made a lot if you play the game a lot, right? You'll be like, okay, I've been in this scenario myself a billion times, and this person would never do this. This is just not something the common player does. And because of that, you really recognize when someone's on that next level and when someone's really at the top of their game. And the fact that the other person can then counter it and they're prepared for that, it's just legitimately mind blowing. And that's something that like you can naturally feed off of on commentary. And it's because you play the game a lot that it doesn't go over your head. You really recognize how just wild that situation and that decision making is.
Right. No, that winners final set from Evo 2019 is amazing. Everyone should watch that, regardless of which
It's
game you're playing.
legitimately my favorite fighting game set of all time,
Oh,
across any game.
definitely. I had to miss it because I was in the Tekken area and just
Mhm.
missed the whole set. I watched it probably multiple times after I got back.
Yeah, it's an incredible set.
So speaking of like events, and Evo would definitely be a prime example. How do you, especially the big events, how do you go about getting the commentary slot or getting hired to work at one of those events?
Oh man. Okay. So when it comes to getting hired for commentary, a lot of it is luck, straight up. So you should put in work as much as you can, right? Because then you can get your face out there. You can get people to hear your commentary. You can practice, right? So you can actually be good. But yeah, a lot of the time, like you have to be fortunate enough to get into certain scenarios in the first place. Like I said, like when we talked about how I came up in commentary in the very first place, right? I'm in Southern California. Then that's lucky point number one. I went and to my local, which is again, I'm putting in the work, right? I'm going to my local. I'm studying the game. I'm playing the game a shit ton. I'm like, okay, I'll commentate at my 5-10 man local that gets 15 viewers or whatever. That's putting in the work. But the person that I went and put in that work with eventually took over a stream that streamed to 1,000 people, right? To stream that thousands via the runback. So because I was lucky enough to have that rapport with the person that took over the stream, I was then put in a position where I got to be in front of 1,000 people on one of the bigger fighting game streams that we have. So like that was a lucky aspect, right? So it's really about trying to put in that work and then striking at the right time, like straight up. And networking has to do with it as well, right? Getting into conversations with the important people that actually hire the commentators, so you can know, right? Like I said, like DreamHack Anaheim recently, and Justin Wong introduced me to some people that were part of a world tour, right? And he was like, "Oh, this person's a really good commentator. You should get them for your world tour, etc." Stuff like that. So it really is a combination of hard work and luck. Like that's pretty much as real as I can get. You can practice, but if you don't ever have that opportunity kind of knock at your door, then it's going to be very frustrating, and you have to have the patience to kind of just keep on keeping on. If you really love to do it, then it's not too hard to keep doing it even when you're struggling. But if you don't really love to do it, you're going to fall off very quickly because it's hard, and just being good is not going to be enough to get you hired.
Right. I think so. I agree with your answer like 100%. But I want to add in something that you said earlier, where you're talking about Marvel commentary and how you thought the current commentators at the time weren't adding or didn't have enough info as to what you wanted, and so that you
Yes.
went and created that. Like you figured out that
Yes.
information and you added that in. And in my opinion, when you're creating something or adding something to commentary that no one else is doing because you want to do it, there's bound to be other people that want that as well.
100%. That's facts. Yeah, you have to really if you are like interested in commentary, you really have to bring an aspect to your commentary that's not already existing in prime form, right? Like you're not gonna out hype or clever or out funny Yipes. Like you're just not gonna do it unless you're Tasty Steve, right? Like those are like the only two people that are gonna be like on that upper echelon level of being able to do that. So it's not gonna help you if you try to go into it with like, oh, I'm gonna do my best Yipes impression, I'm gonna do my best Tasty Steve impression, or Sajam or Rip or Jeremy or whoever the hell, right? You really have to find your own identity and you have to bring your own flavor to the table. And I think that's something also that like commentators that are just coming up kind of get lost in. They often like to do their best impression of this commentary, which is natural, right? That's kind of what we do as humans. We kind of impersonate, imitate who we think or who we like doing that job, right? And I think that's fine to start off, but you really need to distinguish yourself very quickly. And you need to take aspects that you find really great from their commentary and put your own twist on it to make sure that you're not just sounding like a carbon copy of them. So yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up. Actually, is the fact that you need to make sure that if there's something you find that's lacking in the current commentary scene for your game, you need to highlight that in an important way and for it to be very digestible for the viewers so they can kind of latch on and be like, oh yeah, I don't know why people don't talk about this enough. And then that kind of gets you noticed more and kind of can get you rising in the tiers, as it were.
Right. And I think that can apply to any esports job in general. Like if you want to work for
Yes.
a team and you notice that they're not doing something, create it and then show it to them or
Yeah.
find a way for it to get out there because people will take notice if you're creating things that people don't already have in front of them.
Yes.
So,
100%.
yeah, for sure. So then how do you especially for large tournaments, how do you prioritize like which games or which tournaments you want to go into at like especially at Evo where there's a bunch of games going on and you have to kind of pick and choose which games you're going to work on
Hmm.
and then as well as picking and choosing which tournaments you're going to go to.
Well, when it comes to the games itself, it's pretty much whatever game I'm feeling the most as a player at the time, right? So, like,
Hmm.
Dragon Ball Fighters is the game I like the most right now, as a person playing it. So that's the game I want to commentate the most because it's the game I'm putting the most time into, the game that I just genuinely enjoy the most. So because of that, that's what I want to commentate, right? I feel like it would be the easiest for me to commentate Dragon Ball because I play the game a lot. I've been in all these scenarios that the players are going to be in themselves. I'm familiar with the community. I can talk about the game even when it comes to just killing time because of how fascinated I am with it. So it's really, to me, when it comes to the games that I want to commentate, I determine it by how much I actually like the game itself. So like Dragon Ball Fighter is at the top of my list for me. I like Street Fighter Five. I know a lot of people don't, but I like Street Fighter Five. So when I commentate that game, I find it easy because I play it a lot as well. Grand Blue, right? Grand Blue's a newer game that I put in a lot of time into. I trying to just get it like a feel for it, trying to get acclimated with it, see how much I like it. But because it's pretty much related to how much time I put into the game itself. When it comes to like tournaments, and granted, I have been like a multi-game specialist. That's kind of one of my niches, is the fact that I can do a lot of games, and I mean it comes from playing fighting games a lot, right? Like I do that for the majority of my time. So because of that, people have seen me put in a lot of work for a lot of different games, and then they hire me to do a bunch of games, right? Like at Frosty, I did what I do. I did Dragon Ball Fighters, KOF 14, Uniclair, and Guilty Gear, right? That's 4 games, right? That's definitely above average for a commentator to do at a tournament. But
Right.
I mean, I've had the time to put in work with all these games, and that's what I do, right? So I kind of just give the tournament organizer my priority list, right? Like Dragon Ball Fighters is usually number one, but I'll be like, okay, yeah, but I can also do Street Fighter, I can also do Uniclair, I can also do Guilty Gear, and leave them to what they do, right? Is when they make the schedule and they put me where they put me, and hopefully, it's the blocks that I like, but who knows, right? That's kind of your life as a commentator. You give the TO what you can do, and then the TO tries to fit you in where they think you'd work out the best. And that's kind of why I've gotten a lot of commentary gigs, is my flexibility, not only with like games, but with partners. A lot of the time I'm able to commentate with people I've never commentated with before and really engage them. I think I had a block at Frosty where I think it was like Dragon Ball, where I have never met this person, never commentated with this person, I've never seen them commentate, and they didn't have a lot of energy. But again, I just tried to engage them as quickly as possible and really tried to make them feel like there's a camaraderie here, even despite us not commentating or not being familiar with each other before. When it comes to tournaments, I mean, the thing about the tournaments is that not every tournament has a budget to fly out a lot of commentators, right? So when it comes to the tournament selection that I pick, I mean, a lot of the time it's because they have the budget to fly me out there, or they have expressed interest in hiring me for like a full scale position, right, where I can be flown out, have the hotel provided for me, etc. So like Evo is close to me, so even if I don't get hired by a tournament like a world tour, like whether it be not Dragon Ball or Street Fighter or whatever have you, especially because some world tours aren't even at Evo, I'm lucky enough to where I can drive to Vegas, right? It's like a 3 hour, 4 hour drive. So because of that, like distance is a big part for me. Like I'll be at all the SoCal tournaments because I live in SoCal. I'll be at the NorCal tournaments because it's easy for me to get there. But when it comes to a lot of the tournaments, and a lot of tournaments we don't have on the West Coast anymore, right? Like even before this, right? There was no, even before the COVID situation, there was no SCR anymore. There was hardly any NorCal, SenCal tournaments besides NCR and SenCal standoff, I think. So like the majority of big tournaments are elsewhere in the country, right? Like a Combo Breaker, like a CEO, like in the East Coast tournaments, right? So because of that, I mean, I kind of get in contact with the people running the world tours, or get in contact with the TOs themselves and see what we can work out. That's pretty much where I'm at when it comes to the tournament scene as a whole.
Right. No, yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. And unfortunately, right now, there's not too many tournaments to go to anyways. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, I think we had a few questions in the chat. So,
Oh yeah.
Here, let me see if I can summarize this one real quick. So this is from Jolly Santa in the chat. Personally, do you think it is harder to commentate a game where it's very slow action and just kind of a lot of waiting, or commentating with someone who doesn't have as much energy, or that you have to work a lot to get them involved?
So read the question to me again. It's whether it's a slower pace game or a person that I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah, they said really campy, so I'm assuming kind of just like
Yeah, slow
slower,
ground based type.
not much to go off of.
And then, or is it harder to compensate with a person that I'm unfamiliar with?
Mhm.
Ooh, there's a lot of like context around those situations that would really inform my decision, or like how hard I find it. Because if it's like Dragon Ball and I don't know the person, I still don't think it's a big deal. Like I don't think it's hard at all, really, because I know Dragon Ball like the back of my hand, and there's so much going on that I can ask them about these certain scenarios or these certain situations constantly, right? Because it's so quick. On the other hand, there's like the slower paced games, but like if I'm with someone that I'm familiar with, then it's kind of easy to just kind of build this rapport that we already have and bring it to the stream itself. So like even when I'm like commentating pools for like a Street Fighter or a Grand Blue or a slower paced game, I mean, if I'm with someone that I know, then it's usually we're just having fun anyway, so it's not hard. I would say the harder of the two, personally, would be the slower action game, just because like I think I'm the best when it's a very fast game like a Dragon Ball or a Marvel 3. So because of that, I just think my personal skill set fits that better. So I think that would be my answer. That the slower pace game, even when I'm with someone that I have a rapport with, I think if I'm not too familiar with the game and it's on the slower end, I'll find that a little bit more difficult than something fast with someone brand new.
Right. Yeah, I think that's good. Um, then we have another one, and I apologize if I mess people's names up, from Kuromina. Who is someone that you have not commentated with that you would like to?
Someone that I've not commentated with that I would like to. I've commentated with a lot of people at this point, which like has been a lot of my bucket list to commentate with. Like I've commentated with Majin Obama, I've commentated with Sajam, I've commentated with Steve, Yipes, Jeremy, Romanova. I've commentated with a lot of people. Was it Damascus? It's funny because this is kind of off topic, but I thought me and Damascus were not a good commentary pairing when we first did it. But after like 2 or 3 times we commentated together, I actually like me and Damascus a lot now. Like I like our dichotomy and just in general like our chemistry. So it's just something to throw out there that if you commentate with someone for the first time and you don't think it went well, to not get discouraged by it. It could just be some growing pains, and you could come to find that that partner is really valuable and you have a really good time commentating with them. I think that's something that happened with me in Damascus. But for somebody that I haven't commentated with that I'd really like to, I've commentated with like Rixta at WNF for Tekken a little bit, but it'd be fun to commentate with him on something that we both are like super grinding, but I'm not sure if that's gonna happen anytime soon. MYK would be a fun one too. MYK, like he's a huge Dragon Ball Fighters player. I don't know how many people know that, but he's like he's put thousands of hours into that game. He'd be really fun to commentate with. Um, who else? Me and Chris Matrix were supposed to commentate at Combo Breaker for Dragon Ball Fighters, but that unfortunately did not end up coming through. He would be fun to commentate with. Who else? Anybody else interesting that I'd really, really like to? I feel like I have an answer to this that I'm missing, but those would be the ones off the top of my head. Yeah. If I think of anybody else, I'll bring him back. Have I commentated with Giuna? They have commentated. Oh yeah, I commentated with Giuna at the Australian tournament, so I did commentate with him as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that off the top of my head, it'd be people like I technically did Chris Matrix with Tournament of Power, so maybe not even Chris Matrix, but we never really got to do a one-on-one type thing.
Right.
But yeah, that my answers off the top of my head. If I think of anybody else, I'll update the answer.
Cool. So then I guess I might add something to that one. With Grand Blue just coming out this month, who's kind of at the top of your list for who you'd like to commentate for that game once we get some tournaments going?
Let me see. I mean, I always want to commentate with Vicious and Sage Am and Steve, right? Those are like my road dogs. Those are my like 3 of my really close in real life friends. So because of that, I'm always down to commentate with them. But beyond that, right? I would like to commentate with Ebonic Plague. I think Ebonic Plague is a good commentator that we have a lot of fun usually when we commentate together. And besides that, in Grand Blue, the problem with Grand Blue, right, is that we haven't gotten a lot of scene for it, a lot of tournaments for it. I will say that a person that I didn't list earlier was Liston. I think Liston's a really good commentator. He does a lot of anime games. He does Street Fighter as well. So he's always been a person that I've wanted to commentate with that I just haven't yet. So hopefully we can fix that sometime in the future. Liston's a great commentator, and he's been on the mic for Grand Blue at NLBC quite a bit as well.
Right. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, so I'd go with him.
I'm excited to finally get Grand Blue in some tournaments, just in general.
Yeah. Hopefully, right.
All right, we got a question just now from Nix Rose. What do you think needs to happen for the FGC to become more mainstream like League of Legends? And do you think that would be a good direction for the FGC?
Good direction is a harder question to answer, I think. Well, I think they're both hard questions to answer. The direction would be fine if we could keep our charm. And I think that's possible because when I look at Dota, I think Dota has a lot of personality, not just in the players, but in the commentators and the analysts and the hosts and whatnot there. They're pretty much the scene that I've seen that has the most personality besides fighting games. And obviously Dota is not as over in the mainstream as League of Legends, but it's pretty popular, right? It's got the international that we talked about earlier that has, $30 million on the line every time and stuff like that. So I think it's possible for us to get mainstream and keep our personality. So I think it is a direction we can go and still succeed at. To actually get there, oh man, I think it kind of has to start at the game design level itself. I'm not sure how much power I think our personalities and our players are fantastic. I do not think that's the problem with the fighting game community. I think our commentators, I think our hosts, I think our analysts, I think we don't have a lot of hosts to be fair, but I think the hosts we do have are strong. I think we have an amazing lineup of commentators. I think our commentators like almost shit on everybody else's esport, to be quite honest. Um, but I would say that it kind of has to start at a game design level. I think there needs to be not really, I don't think they need to be more accessible, right? Or accessible, yes, but not simplified. And I think that's kind of where a lot of the misconceptions have happened when it comes to game design for fighting games, is that accessible equals simplified, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think accessible is stuff like online that works really well, right? So people can play at all times of the day, so I don't have to queue for like. There's a huge problem in Exert, right? Was that there just weren't people online to play with at certain times, and it's like it's because it's delay based and it's trash, because you can't actually play with people that are across the country or even across the world, right? We can see in Mortal Kombat 11, Sonic Fox is playing Dizzy. One person's in the Northeast in New York, and the other person's in the United Kingdom. Like the fact that that's actually possible is like super important, I think. But again, even though I say that, right, Mortal Kombat 11 is not actually like, it's not lighting up the fighting game community, right? It's not like bringing us to another plateau that we haven't seen before. So it's more than just that. I think like a single player mode that's kind of like properly teaching the game is cool. I think it's a good idea, but man, it's hard to really pin down a couple of reasons how the fighting game community can get mainstream. I think we are lacking a lot on content as well when it comes to just like content outside of the game, which is a shame because I think all of our personalities are super strong. And big ups like JM Crofts, who's doing stories on big storylines and fighting games. I really think stuff like that will help us a lot, like just kind of focusing on the storylines that we do have, because we have some amazing storylines. Obviously, like Goichi and Sonic Fox has brought a lot of attention to the fighting game community because of that. So we could really stuff like that storytelling and prop it up in ways that more people than just the fighting game community can see. I think that could bring eyes onto it. So I think it's about making the right partners and really capitalizing on those partners, giving us exposure to make those stories that are most important like at the top tier of what other people see, I guess. It's a
Right.
hard question to answer though. I don't have all the answers for sure.
No, I agree. It's such a complicated subject. Like there's so many
Yeah.
things that would have to go right. There's so many things that would have to happen in order for that level or for the FGC to reach that next level.
Yeah.
Okay. We're almost out of time, but we have a few more questions.
Yeah.
All right. This one, another from Caromina. Favorite hobbies outside the FGC?
Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a big Dungeons and Dragons player, a big Dungeons and Dragons fan. So that would probably be my primary hobby. I like sports a lot too. I like basketball. I like playing basketball a lot. Um, but yeah, I mean, a lot of the time now, legit, like everything I do is about like it's from a dungeon master's perspective. Like everything I watch, everything I play, like it's all about how I can use it in my games. So that's pretty much the hobby that's been primarily taking my time, to be quite honest. Is D&D, because dungeon mastering is like a full-time job. But besides that, it's like it's basketball. Basketball I've always been super into. I used to write like music, like stuff like that. I don't do
Mhm.
it as much anymore, but that was something I was into for a while. I was into graphic design for a while as well. Like I still have some basic Photoshop skills because of my time in graphic design. But yeah, nowadays it's primarily D&D for sure.
Awesome. I'm super jealous. I've been trying to get a campaign going in my area with some of my friends for years, and I can just never get it locked down.
No, hey, don't give up, bro. All right, it took convincing. It took a lot of just talking about Dungeons and Dragons to get certain people around me to play. Right, like me and Hanzo played pretty early because Hanzo was the person that put me on to Critical Role.
Oh
So
yeah.
once he put me on to Critical Role, I was like, okay, like with me, if I get really into something like a Dungeons and Dragons or like a fighting game, I just can't sit back and enjoy it as a spectator. Right, like I have to be an active participant in it. So once like I got really addicted to Critical Role, I was like, all right, well, we have to play. And we had a couple of people around us that were already into Dungeons and Dragons a little bit too, but that didn't have a full group to play. So once like the two of us got in contact with them, then we all had enough people to kind of play, right? But then even then, that's not when Sajam or Tanman or Elder or Jeremy, four out of the six people you see on that show, even started playing, right? Me and Hanzo were playing like a year before those two were playing, or before those four were playing. So don't give up. If you talk about it a lot and you are doing it in a very fun, enthusiastic tone, and you tell them like the stories that you do have of being able to play, like in your case, I would say try to maybe find some people online that you can play with, because we predominantly play online and we have fun with it, right? It's not
Right.
You're not missing I don't think you're missing a lot not being in person. I've done an in-person session now. I don't think you're missing a lot. It's fun to do in person too, but it's just as fun to do it online, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there's so many different tools you can use nowadays.
Yeah, for sure.
So then this will be our last question from the chat, which is related
Okay.
to what we are just talking about from Nick's Rose. Where do you draw your inspirations for D&D? And what is some advice you would give to someone who also wants to be a good DM?
Who wants to also be a good DM?
Yeah.
Okay. So inspirations for D&D literally come from everywhere now. I would say the predominant inspirations I have for this Magic Pixel campaign are The Wire and BioShock. Those are like my two big inspirations for this campaign. And probably the D&D shows that I watch, like Critical Role and Dimension 20 and Court of Swords and stuff. That's kind of where I've taken my DM style. I've kind of made sure it's like a hodgepodge of all the DMs that I really like. But yeah, so what I like to do, and why I'm doing a homebrew campaign this time around, and what I'm trying to do with this homebrew campaign, is take those influences that I don't see a lot in Dungeons and Dragons, right? Because when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, obviously it's a fantasy game, and people take a lot of influence from fantasy tropes and fantasy properties and stuff like that. What I want to do, and what I'm trying to do, is take stuff like The Wire and take stuff like BioShock and take stuff like Pulp Fiction and these Tarantino films that I like, and kind of inject them into the Dungeons and Dragons fantasy world.
Mm-hmm.
Thing that I want to do, and I think that's kind of some advice I have as well for dungeon mastering, is take what you really, 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 really like and try to put your own twist on it and insert it into Dungeons and Dragons that way, even if it's not something that is like prototypical for the genre itself, right? Like who thinks of The Wire when they think of Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's like on the complete opposite spectrums of each other, but it's something that I really, really like. It's my favorite TV show of all time, and I really like gangster stories and stories involving narcotics and stuff like that. So because of that, that's kind of what I want to do with the campaign. As people saw, if you watched the first episode, right, they ran into a thieves guild that have been growing narcotics and kind of distributing them and stuff like that. So that's, and there's like the high scene, or not the high scene, but the Mexican standoff scene with everybody like holding guns at each other and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I wanted to insert into the game. Advice for being a good DM is really make sure that you understand that D&D is a cooperative storytelling game. At least that's what me and my players believe. If you want to run like a antagonistic game where it's kind of DM versus players, that's fine, but make sure everyone at the table knows that. Communication, as with almost everything in life, is the key. If you want to run an antagonistic game where you're doing your best to kill the players at every turn, and the players don't know that, nobody's going to have a good time. Like the players are going to have a real shit time, and it's going to be a real shit show, and it's not going to be fun. If everybody's agreed to that, I'm sure it's going to be a blast, because that's what people signed up for. So you really have to make sure that people are getting into what people sign up for is what they're going to get. So I think communication before the group even really takes place, or even before a session takes place, is super important. I got lucky because and I think if you can do this, I think this is what you should do. Because the people that I play Dungeons and Dragons with are the people I play games besides Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like we play board games together, we play fighting games together, etc. So we're familiar with each other enough where a lot of that stuff can go unspoken, and we kind of know each other's boundaries and limits and what we're looking for in the game. Because not only because we're familiar with each other, but because we have talked about that stuff before, mainly what we're trying to get out of the game, right? I always try to make sure I know what my players want to do when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons. Like, okay, you're building this character. What exactly are some of the end goals for this character? Where do you see this character going, right? And I don't necessarily want them to get there like just on a linear path where they're like, okay, I want to become the leader of a thieves guild. Okay, well, the joy is how they get there, right? And how they might change their mind along the way, right? What they when they see what actually entails being the leader of a thieves guild is like, do you really still want to be one when you see all this backstabbing and lies and all this deceit going down? And if so, perfect. Glad that you're into that and that's what you want to get out of the game. But I definitely recommend talking to your players a lot and making sure that you know what they're looking for when it comes to playing D&D in the first place. Besides that, yeah, I mean, once you get into this DM shit, you're gonna realize that everything you look at in terms of media is gonna be inspiration, and it's gonna be something you're gonna be able to take and apply to your game. So yeah, communication with the players, open communication with the players, I think is the most important thing. And then besides that, kind of making sure that your passions, what you're really passionate about, is also inserted into the game so you can have some fun. It's not just about the players, even though it is predominantly about the players. That's what I've always aimed at as well. And that's kind of what gives me the confidence to go forward and do this whole stream game, is the fact that I try to make my players have fun and make them happy. That's my first priority. If my players are having fun, successful game. That, as far as I'm concerned, right? I don't give a fuck about the viewers or any of this other shit. Like, if my players are having fun, then it's a successful game. And because we've played so much Dungeons and Dragons at this point with me as the DM, they have given me the confidence to pretty much go with what I think is good, because they consistently have fun and they consistently want to play with me as the DM. So because of that, I feel all the confidence in the world with going forward and how we're approaching the game.
Yeah, and anyone that's not watching Magic Pixel definitely needs to be.
Oh yeah,
It's so
every
much
Tuesday,
fun.
7 p.m.
All right, so I think we've about hit time. So I have
Okay.
a quick question for you. We got great
Yeah,
news about Guilty Gear Strive this week regarding
indeed,
the rollback netcode, and then we
indeed.
also have a trailer tonight that's going to be going up. Any predictions, quick, as to what you think we'll get? I'm hoping for Zato.
You know, I'm hoping for Zato, bro. You know, so that's the character I made in Exer. That's my favorite fighting game character of all time. I'm very cautiously approaching this trailer though, if it is Zato, because I've gotten my hands on Strive. I've actually gotten to play a decent amount of it, and I don't know how he'd work in that game. They've changed so many things about characters and the system in general that I think perhaps leaving him how he is, he's going to be one of the better characters in the game if they do, like potentially the best. So because of that, hey, I mean, yeah, leave him the way he is because that's my character and he's going to be good. But I don't see that happening. So I'm very cautious about how they're going to change him, because he's a character that I legitimately fell in love with. Like, I love playing that character so much. Like, the act of just playing him really brings me great joy. So because of that, I'm a little like wary about what they're actually going to do to change him. I'm hoping for Zato, but I'll take like a Dizzy, but more so than Dizzy or like Elfeld, I want to see a return of a character from AC. Like, I want to see Zappa or Testament. Those are the other two characters that I really want to see as well. In terms of the netcode news, I mean, I couldn't be happier the fact that they have taken the cries and the pleas of the fans seriously, right? Big ups to Sajam, Keats, and Filament, Mike Z, the Cannons, everybody that has really put on for GGPO and rollback netcode, NRS in general, all the American developers like Zynac as well, of course, at Arxis himself. Like, big ups to all these paladins fighting for GGPO, because it's so important for us to be able to play fighting games online. It's wild. And even before this whole COVID situation, like, we
Yeah.
needed great netcode. We need it for fighting games, right? Because we need
Yes.
to be able to play coast to coast. We need to be able to play people in other countries and really grow the world scene, right? So yeah, big ups to all those warriors that are constantly on the front line fighting for rollback netcode, because needs it, and I couldn't be happier with the fact that Guilty Gear has announced that their netcode will launch with online rollback. Even if this first beta is not going to have it, they have realized how important it is and are going to put hopefully the care and the love needed to make GGPO good for their game, because of course we've seen some pitfalls when it comes to rollback netcode before. So I know Zynak tweeted out that he's going to try to do his best to avoid all those pitfalls or all those mistakes that rollback has made before, or games have implemented rollback before have made. So yeah, big ups to all of them, and I can't wait to actually get my hands on the game itself.
No, yeah, for sure. I'm super excited. Hopefully, I
Yeah.
get into that beta. I'm hoping.
Yeah, and I want to see Zappa and Testament too, because I want to see those characters updated, because they were both so beautiful in AC, right? They always had very cool elements to them in AC, and we didn't get to see either of them in Exert outside of story mode. So I really want to see their updated models in especially with how beautiful of a game Strive is and how beautiful of a game Exert was. Like, Guilty Gear just looks so pretty that it's a shame that those two characters specifically haven't been updated with full gameplay models yet, and I really want to see them in addition to Zato, of course.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I think that about does it. Do you want to let the people know where they can find you online?
Yeah, you can find me on twitter.com/Rynge with an underscore at the end. Unfortunately, I do not have Rynge itself. It's part of some Swedish business group. And they will never give it to me because that person's last name that runs the account is Rynge for some reason. So yeah, I don't think I'll ever get Rynge without an underscore, but maybe one day. You can also find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Rynge. This has been my first month of consistent streaming. I've been trying to stream Monday through Friday every week, which I've almost successfully done. I didn't get to stream this Tuesday because I was preparing for the campaign that debuted that night. And I didn't get to stream Thursday because I was at the Axis office doing a stream there. But besides that, if I'm at home and able to stream, I will be doing so Monday through Friday. It's mainly fighting games, but I also have a lot of like variety games that I want to play on stream. I want to play Doom Eternal, the next Doom. I just finished Doom 2016. I want to play like Super Mario RPG. I want to play Bioshock again. But it's predominantly fighting games, and then as well as a lot of D&D stuff. Like I do DM prep streams for Magic Pixel. Lots of spoilers on those streams. There's just going to be all the spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, don't watch those streams. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Don't worry about it. But I do those, as well as I do session recaps the next day as well. So it's a lot of D&D, a lot of fighting games, and then some single player stuff mixed in as well. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that wraps it up for episode 1 of the EQNX podcast. Rynge,
All
thank you
right.
very much for joining us, and
Thank you for having me.
we'll be back next week on the 27th for episode 2 with special guest Vicious.
Oh, snap, my boy. That should be a good one.
Yeah. All right. See ya.
All right, y'all. Peace out. Oh, hit my mic.